How honest are you with yourself when it comes to telling yourself what you are thinking and what you are feeling? How specific are you when it comes to communicating with others? This life is about mixed messages. And here's the funny thing: when I wrote the description earlier, I actually talked about clarity and about the importance to be clear in order to be understood, wanting to speak out, being able to speak out. And then when I wrote the description to go live, I actually wrote the total opposite. I was talking about mixed messages instead of clarity. Well, you know the drill. I need to switch for a sec to Instagram, which I'm going to do right now. Click go live, and then I'm going to head back to the studio. So here I am again. And well, let's go. Friday Night Live. You know all about this. It's about looking back on the week. And in this case, it was very much inspired not only by the last week, but also by something that happened yesterday. And here's the thing that happened yesterday was just one moment in a process that took years, over 5 years ago, probably more along the lines of 7, 8 years ago. Yesterday, I had to reapply for my disability parking card. And for those who have followed me, you know that at times everything seems to be going smoothly. And then before I know it, things go haywire again. So, for instance, last summer, after a year and a half, I was suddenly back on crutches again. And I've got the pictures that I was on the terrace. I was standing there posing in front of a table. And it was like, oh, now here was the thing. It was instantly familiar again as well, which was the one thing that my physical therapist was not too thrilled about. And he said, I don't want you to walk with crutches too long because you are too familiar with them. And that's correct, because I've walked with them for years, especially after having missed out on them for almost half a year. When I applied for the parking card years ago, I was in a situation where I had one surgery, and it helped a little, but it didn't help enough. And the result was I could stand on one foot and a few toes. Nobody seemed eager to help me. I have seen a lot of medics and nothing. So it things became worse. I used the crutches, then I had to use braces in order to be able to use the crutches. And every now and then, I would basically use a wheelchair in certain circumstances. So all combined, it wasn't a good time. It took me till the end of 2018 until I got my second surgery, and of course, things weren't okay straight away. I mean, you can fix the problem, but the body is a very complex whole of signals, muscles, bones. So it's not just about the muscles and the bones combining joints. It's especially about the nerves and the nerve endings and the information that goes through the brain and from the brain in order to be able to move around in a good way. And of course, the wound still needed to heal. I had lost functionality, part of the functionality on my left leg, from my left leg. It wasn't like it was all of a sudden like this, whereas the other one was like this, but still my stability was off. I had problems leaning on that left leg because I didn't allow myself to lean on that left leg because it hurt. So my whole way of standing up was tilted. Instead of being like this, it was like this. And that's not good for your skeleton. It's basically, well, if you just keep walking like this, that has its effect on everything. So when I started asking for the disability parking card, because it hurt so immensely with every step I took, they, nah, they just brushed it off. And then I think I applied for a wheelchair, especially since I needed it because of the surgery. Of course, that whole conversation was months later, so I already had bought my own. And still, no, we don't believe it. So, yeah, part of it was actually taken seriously. At some point, they did say, okay, yeah, we understand that you need one and that you may need transportation by cab. But so many times was no, 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 no. Well, at some point, I did it again. I applied again. And this time I said, I don't want to talk to that one person anymore. Couldn't be more specific. I think I may have added things like, if I see that guy again, I'm going to jump the desk. I don't think I said so, but it was pretty much clear what I meant, even though I didn't use words like that. It was like, that's not going to end well when I see that guy again. You know, anyway, they gave me a different person. They assigned a different person to my case, which was very unusual. But the good news was this guy understood precisely what I was talking about. And he asked me questions which made me think, like, yeah, that's true. Yeah, I didn't go to gym when I was at high school. Yeah, when I was at elementary school, I had problems. Yes, I did go to the hospital quite a lot, and they didn't understand what was going on. And yes, my GP at the time thought that it was something in, between my ears, something mental, which expressed itself physically. And, people didn't really understand what was going on. And with him asking questions, he got me to see the pattern because he knew what to ask. So I got it for 5 years. Apparently, that's the norm over here. And well, the 5 years are over and done with. So in the last couple of years, I have been wondering a lot about, do I still need it? Well, that question was quickly answered last summer when all of a sudden a disc slipped. I experienced the problems with the hernia again. It was like electricity jolts going through one leg. The good news about that was it masked the pain in my leg, which I had had for I don't know how long, but it was a pretty constant pain. It was not always there, but when I would lie down, for instance, it would be there. And so I had to move a lot to my right side and avoid lying down on my left side. And that was all of a sudden gone. Of course, my stability was gone too. And my physical therapist was quite worried at that time. So basically, he said, I want you to go and see the orthopedic surgeon like now. And well, being a good girl, that's what I did. that moment that I was back on crutches, that moment that I realized this wasn't going well, it was also the time that I was helping out a new client temporarily. And he lived in a different city, and that city consisted of, well, sort of like hills. So I had to, it was like a round, how do I say it? It was like a hill on the floor, and like the top of a circle. That's the best way to express it. I wouldn't know how to say it differently. And for some reason, they thought that was cool to watch or to look at. I don't know. Um, all I know is it hurt me a lot. And every time I went there, the walking got more difficult. It really became a problem until I had to use crutches there as well. So every time I was like, okay, we're going in the right direction, then all of a sudden I went straight back in the wrong direction. The good news was that the slip disc had slipped back in place again due to a method called Mackenzie, which my physical therapist knew about, and he told me what to do in order to make sure it was at the right place again. All said and done, it was a pretty difficult time to experience, like, oh, I wanted to let go of that handicapped parking cart, you know. And I was sort of practicing, like, okay, I'll just stand, a few parking spaces further away, so someone else can park there if needed. And there were moments that, then when there would be a big hole, I could walk across that big hole. And it was like, well, maybe I don't need it anymore. But, after those two very extreme experiences, I knew pretty quickly, okay, that's not true. Also, I had experienced these tears in my muscles before, so checkbooks too. So I knew that it my whole progress it's one of, yes, there I'm going, and then it's also a few steps back. Now, when we are going to talk about mixed messages, there were one thing that basically stood out was, can I do it or not? Can I use it or not? Because this is about being able to walk 100 meters. That's, if you can't do that, then that's when you get a disability parking card. And well, as you can tell, it varies. So prior to going there, I was like, what do I need to do? Now I'm going to show you this one. So that's about the messages. And then the first thing is, we want clarity. So the question was, can I do it or can I not? Do I know it myself? So by talking to the physical therapist about it, I got quite a good idea about what I could do and what I couldn't do. So I basically said it myself. I said, one moment I can and the next moment I can't. And I was like, well, it's on the third floor. I can just climb those stairs and then, they will notice the problem. And then we get to the part which has to do with honesty, because I could basically say, okay, I can't do it, but I can do it at times and I can't do it at times. I was like, I can show it. Yes, of course, I could have brought the crutches, which didn't make sense to me. I could have brought the braces, which in retrospect I better should have done. I actually should have worn them. But that's not what felt right. So I talked to others about it. I said, I don't know. What do I need to do? Because if I was going to be tired myself before going there, that would have its repercussions on me. So I had to decide, what am I going to do? How straightforward am I going to be? So getting back to clarity, I thought, okay, they didn't have any medical records of me. I was like, okay, so I started printing the first time I went to the current physical therapist, which was 13 years ago. And what was described in the letter for the physical therapist, it was still a typed letter. Can you imagine that? A typed letter. And then there was the report from the surgery of my ankle. There was the report or basically the request for a second opinion with additional info about my knees. There was the request to investigate what was going on with my back and what they had found. And then there was the letter from the physical therapist herself. So I've got 3 physical therapists, and actually one of them wrote the letter. So, and then it was me and the story from almost 5 years ago, when I had talked to that one doctor who had explained to me what it was like. Now, it didn't go very smoothly to start with. It didn't go bad either, just to be clear about things. But for some reason, this building is in the midst of a construction zone. And especially on Thursdays, there is no room to park the car. They know this, but still, they asked me to come on a Thursday. So I went there. I was there at the time that was specified, but I couldn't find any parking spot. The 3 handicap parking spots were taken, and all the other parking spots were taken too. So basically, I had to stand like over 500 meters away, so a little under half a mile. And, I was sort of a little bit stressed because of not knowing what to expect. And, well, then I started walking. So I was talking to the lady who had given me the directions where to go. And she said, shouldn't we reschedule this appointment to tomorrow? And I said, well, tomorrow at that time, I'm actually going to be at the physical therapist. So no. And I said, well, he knows that I'm coming. I'm just going to be a little bit later, and I've got everything printed. So, So she said, okay, I'll let him know that you're going to be there. So I think there were like 5 minutes left, maybe, from that half an hour by the time I got there. And this was the thing. The moment that I left here, I had been experiencing pain already in the tendon on my left of my left leg. So there's a big plate on the side of your leg, and that was actually already hurting. Then my right knee is still hurting, by the way, when I was going down the stairs. And normally the physical therapist makes it run smoothly again. But for a circumstance I'll tell in a little bit, I didn't go there. So the start wasn't too good to begin with. And then, of course, I had to walk there with non-flat surfaces, which doesn't work well for me. And then it was like, okay. So I went in there. He was a little annoyed. He wants to go home. Maybe that was in my advantage. I don't know. So I gave him all the documents. He typed it down. I explained like my story from, elementary school. I probably could have told him that my shoulder already got dislocated when I was a baby. And then there he was, and he asked that question. He said, so can you walk 100 meters or can't you walk 100 meters? And I looked at him and I said, well, That depends on what happens. I said, one day I can, and one day I can't. Every time I think, well, I'm good to go now, then something happens and I'm right back where I started. That was something that they seemed to understand. And I also added to that part because I had to bring my list of medication for some reason. Like, oh, and when I have an allergic reaction and I don't have my medication on me, it's in the car. And I need to be able to walk to the car because I have a hard time swallowing. And if it doesn't get fixed, then actually I won't be able to swallow any water for like 24 hours. It already happened before. Now I do know what to ask them for, but still, I don't know if it's really scary because I know what's happening. I can still talk, just, but not being able to swallow anything is, well, it's very unnatural, and it's very uncomfortable. That specifically. So the good news is I can still breathe, and the bad news is I cannot eat or drink anything. So, and when I would do it, it was literally like burp, burp, burp. Just like you hear when, a drain is clogged. You hear burp. You can hear those little uh, bulbs of air. Burp. Very weird sound. Anyway, so that's what I answered. And then he said, okay, I'm going to give a positive advice. And that was it. So here I was. And like I said, I had been wondering about this for ages, but it's not my style to be dishonest. I just want to say it like it was. I didn't want to exaggerate, but I did want to make it known that it was important to me. And because in all those other years, people hadn't believed me, I was a little bit like, well, I don't want to put up a show, but I can manage to make myself feel the pain. Now, of course, I shouldn't have even thought that because of the parking that far away. After the consult, which was like maybe 5 minutes, I sat there for over an hour. I actually recorded a video. I'm not sure if I posted that one. I was about to post that one. And then I realized, oh my God, it's over 15 minutes. So that means I need to split it up. So um, it's still in the works. But yeah, um, the whole thing was about clarity. That's why he asked me that question. And well, like I said, I wanted to be honest. So I had a decision to make. What was I going to do? And I knew that by walking that much further away, I basically contradicted myself. And I said, listen, I've been dealing with this for so long. I had to learn to push through the pain. We're not just talking about discomfort, we're talking about actual pain. I said, I'm going to pay the price for this. I know I am. Hence why I was sitting there for an hour. I said, but there's a difference for me between having torn something. I said, if I would have torn something, I wouldn't have walked on. I would have said, okay, just reschedule the whole thing. I said, because I know that's going to cost me 6 to 8 weeks, if not more. I said, but in this case, I knew that I did cross my boundaries, but I also knew that this was an important meeting and I didn't want to reschedule this. He seemed to understand that too. But again, he did ask that question. And it was actually so easy. The whole conversation was easy. It was so different compared to what had happened in the past. But when we talk about mixed messages, these mixed messages are not just to someone else, they're also what do we tell ourselves. And like I said, there were many times in the past few years, well, in the last 5 years, well, let's say in the last 2 to 3 years, since I got the card, that I was like, but do I really need it anymore? And of course, the nice thing would be to say, I don't need it anymore. and um, but I also knew that, when it comes to my system, it's very unpredictable. So there was always this going back and forth. What do I tell myself if I say I need it? Do I make it worse? Is my body going to act accordingly? Those were the things that I was thinking about. Am I taking up a parking spot from someone else? Well, that's easily fixed. Park a few spots further down the road. But like I said to the guy behind the desk, you're talking about 100 meters, but let's face it, if I would have been able to park the car in front of the door, take the elevator to the third floor, then I still would have to walk like 100 meters just to get to your office. So, what are we talking about? I think that made sort of sense because that's the whole problem. If you can only walk like 100 meters, then what do you do afterwards? Well, in my case, what I told you, I walked more. And the result was that today, well, actually yesterday already, I don't know how I managed it, but I did play some drums. And afterwards, I was supposed to go to a friend, which never happened. It's going to happen tomorrow. But instead, I came here and I was wanting to do some work, but the opposite happened. I fell asleep. And then I woke up and I fell asleep again. I woke up, I fell asleep again. And then when I actually woke up from having slept, and it was time to go to the physical therapist, I was like, no, I'm way too tired. My eyes were dry. And I was like, no, no, doesn't feel good. Now, here's the thing. Someone had asked me to drop by. So normally on Fridays, I will go see a client after physical therapy. And the evening before, we actually were we were talking about whether I could make it or not, because I would have training too. And the moment that I talked about the training, I should have known, because, part of me already knew the answer. I literally had said it when I was there. This is going to cost me. I literally said it to the person on the phone. This is going to cost me. I sat there for over an hour and still I said, yeah, I'm going to drop by tomorrow. Well, actually, I do have training. Actually, I don't want to go. Here, this is crossing boundaries, right? Can we do it on Saturday? No, we can't because birthday, all. And someone else was going to drop by. So as well, I can probably watch the replay, all that stuff. It's not like it's the end of the world, but, I usually don't watch replays. And then, of course, this morning I had to say to her, I'm sorry, I'm not coming. And like I said, I already knew that I wasn't able to come. I just didn't let that message sink in. I didn't give myself the clarity I could have had. And it's not because I didn't want to admit it to myself. It more had to do with not thinking things through. So, yes, I had said it in the moment that I said, well, let's postpone it. Let's do things in a different way. That's when I realized, oh, yeah, sure, I could have known. So I guess I sort of was in denial. Well, I wasn't in denial after that anymore because, like I said, because of the fatigue. So I did do some stuff, which was good, and it. I realized that this was not just about walking that distance. This was also about the mental effects of all those years before. And I can tell you, one can get pretty tired because of having to process all of these things. Now, yesterday, well, not just yesterday, last week, I was somewhere with my brother celebrating my birthday, and we got to talk about a certain pyramid. I wrote the name down in the description. I always keep forgetting it. But anyway, it was about people being honest, yes or no. So today, when I was dealing with one of those videos, which was over 15 minutes long, and then realizing that part two was only like 90 seconds long instead of like 6 to 8 minutes, I realized that I was listening to it. And during the recording of that video, I went from one topic straight to the next one, straight to the next one, all related to mixed messages, all related to clarity and to honesty and decisions. And without repeating everything that I said on there, what he was talking about was what was going on when people are working together in teams. And one of the things I said was, well, I remember, working in teams and being on the outside of that team. And, you know, they didn't want me in the team because I was doing something which was outside of their comfort zone. And, well, they wanted me to apply by their rules, which I couldn't do because what I did was totally different. But, well, they didn't accept that. And, well, I absolutely felt left out. Now, the good news was I had to talk to a lot of other departments and parties involved and suppliers. And, that was good. I I had a good bond with everyone, with clients. Within 3 months, everyone knew me and the rest of the organization. And, well, whereas they were happy with me, like I said, my direct team wasn't. So we talked about clarity, about mixed messages, and about honesty. And the whole pyramid thing was focused on improving things. So it looks at things from a negative aspect, distrust, not working together, all those things. And then saying, okay, but now we need to do it. And, well, one can say, sure, we're going to do it, and then do the exact opposite thing. But if you have to keep one another accountable and you do it together, and, well, there are people who can actually say, well, this person didn't do this, that, or the other, and now we are. So I'm not going to say that the person throws one another under the bus, but, well, someone will start to speak up at some point when the entire team is held accountable and it's not working. And then I said, well, this has to do with what they have experienced in the past, distrust. And when I was writing this about clarity and honesty, when it came to messages, I realized, like, okay, so people can speak their mind, open up to, for instance, managers, team leaders, but chances are that, well, they hope for support, but they actually can experience repercussions, so it can be used against them. And what do you do when you experience that, especially when you have experienced that more often? Well, you zip it. You're not going to talk anymore and explain what's going on inside of you. But here's the thing, the moment that you start to keep silent to others about things, then what is the message that you are sending to yourself? I'm not worth it. I'm not worth speaking up. Mm, you know what? Yeah, I can make it somehow. Somehow I'll fix it. So you basically start to believe what you are not telling them or are telling them, which isn't true. And that's not a good thing, because if there's one person you want to be honest with, then it's to yourself. Because your mind knows when you are hiding things, when you are stalling things, when you don't have the intent to do anything at all. Well, that's a bit of a problem, right? And, when we start dreading going to work, then at some point people will fall ill. That's the way it works. So we can push ourselves, but there's a limit to what we can do and what we can take, especially when we don't feel heard, seen, and understood. So, editing the video, looking at the video, I was like, oh yeah, this is about the clarity from Instagram. We have different formats, and each of them has different lengths of time, which is okay. And well, um, of course, the moment that I do understand how it works, then it's up to me to do something. But because when I go live, I don't have to edit anything, and it's way over 15 minutes. It's well, there's some sort of confusion. Let's put it that way. So getting back to when I started the first description, I talked about the importance of being clear about what it is you want and need in order to get support, in order to have communication which functions because you understand one another. You know what you're talking about. Okay, maybe there's the need for some more clarity, some more specificity, but things go way quicker when you just say it the way it is instead of beating around the bush and, just hiding what it is you want to say, but you don't dare to say. And hence why it was so funny that in the end, I actually talked, when I had been writing things down, about mixed messages. So to give you an idea, this is what started to happen. Well, actually, this was part two. There's way more in my notebook. And it was like, okay, interesting, but that's the way it works. Now, to add a little something to this, I get coached, and my coach told me that the second round of coaching was going to be really exciting and fun. So he said, you got homework. Okay, so I looked at the homework. This is what I realized, and I posted about this too. I have been talking about the future self. I did so last time. So it's about being the role model. What is my future version of myself who can function as a role model? Because, good habits are already there, certain knowledge is already there. Fear is no longer part of the package, because the future version of myself is comfortable with the things that I consider hard right now, which are going to be a walk in the park by then. And I was like, okay, so how this has happened for a while, actually. I said very proudly I didn't have brain fog anymore. And here I am literally stuck on, okay, what was it again that I said last week? Oh, yeah, about the future role model. That was the one. So here we are again. So the future role model knows what to do. And when the questions got asked, and these were made by Brendan Burchard, um, a number of you know, he's my role model. Well, the questions, they started with being caged and then about being comfortable. There was another area, but these two actually made me think really hard. And it was because they used a certain terminology, in this case caged, that made me think. And all of a sudden, there I was talking to that future self again. They also referred to the future self. And I was like, oh, and the future self would do things that I am not comfortable doing right now and I actually don't want to do. So here's the thing. Decades ago, I already wanted to write a book about things going on in organizations, precisely what my brother was talking about. People not feeling heard, seen, and understood, not wanting to cooperate because you know what was going to happen. In the meantime, downsizing, you have to walk everywhere to find your colleagues. So it has to be more efficient everywhere all the time, but at the same time, the feeling part of that organization and feeling at home at a place where you need to work, that's going haywire. So for a while, I thought that things had changed during COVID. You know, people had to work from home. Of course, that had its consequences too. People can get really upset with being stuck with one another in a room or in one place when normally they would go outside, do their own thing, and then get back and would be happy to see one another. And I learned that workplaces had changed to zones where you could connect with one another, have meetings, but also just relax and, you know, get all these ideas. And one thing that I read about before the whole COVID thing was, for instance, Google and also Tony Chocolonely. So those were workplaces which were built to make it easy for the employer. So if you go on holiday, then do it the right way, not 2 weeks, but you know, longer. Oh, you need to have your laundry done. Yeah, you can do it here. You need to things. Yeah, you can sleep in here. There's a hangmat, and you know, just relax and see what's going on. They facilitated the options for people to actually relax. Whereas what I've experienced in multiple other organizations was the opposite. When you would close your eyes for a minute, for instance, because you're not allowed to look at your screen for over 1 hour, I think, without closing them for 10 minutes or at least not looking at your screen. That moment it was said, "Are you okay?" And that was a different team leader. And back then, I didn't have the sense yet to say, hey, hang on, I'm doing this because it's better for my eyes. And I appreciate it if you didn't say it like that. Well, I could have explained it without saying, you're not my team leader. I could have simply explained it. But, you know, I didn't have that knowledge back then. But getting back to Caged and talking about the things that I wanted to change in my life, you know, that was very confrontational. And the answers that my future self gave to me was also very confrontational. I was like, oh my God. So she knows what I need to do. And quite honestly, I know that the future version of me is correct. It's not that hard to come up with those answers. It's just that I don't feel very comfortable with it. Now, the future version doesn't really care about whether it's comfortable or not, because by the time that I'm my future version, it becomes comfortable. And of course, a certain amount of time feeling uncomfortable is normal. It is part of growth. If you don't feel uncomfortable, then the question is, how much are you going to grow? So I realized that by asking the questions just a little bit differently, the answers can be completely different. And especially when I went into the whole too comfortable thing, I realized that too comfortable also meant that I wasn't challenging myself enough in certain areas. So when I got back from answering those questions, I was annoyed, I was confused, and I was reluctant. I'll honestly say it's not like I haven't done everything. Well, I haven't done everything, but there were some things that I was like, yeah, I've actually been talking about this on video. I've been talking about those organizations and what's going on. And why one wish still is the same: to write a book about it, to give training, to show organization, because that's what it comes down to. What can be changed if they look at things from a different perspective? And quite honestly, I would love to do it with my brother. And I actually said to him, like, oh, wouldn't that be cool if I would be able to come in and, you would talk about the doing things in the short term because you want to look forward to the now, to the future. And I explain not in a way to solve things for people, um, but in a way that people understand why they are doing the things they do. And hence, that way, create um, a sort of a bonding, because a lot of people are actually facing the same things. I would love that, to actually make a difference. And then today, I was listening to Brendan Burchard. Yeah, that's that guy again. And he said something about creating a ripple effect. And those who have watched me before, they know that I always say I want to leave a legacy. I want to create a ripple effect, which, it starts with one generation and it becomes bigger and bigger with the following generations. But in this case, if I can talk some, I'm going to say, if I can talk some sense into the one running the company, and they start to understand that it's important to see their employees, not just as labor who have to do that one thing, but also as people with skills and things they love to do and can be challenged to improve themselves and grow, but in a way that where they are the best, that they actually get challenged to do something in that aspect. So you don't have mediocre or just simply hardworking employees, but you have employees who not only work hard, but also are thriving. So it's the difference between we do between what we have to do, but well, we get paid for it, so we do it. And hey, but this is cool. I'm actually learning new stuff, and I can actually work on that one thing that that gets me really excited. And if you can get people excited, you know, you can be surprised what that means for your organization. So when managers or the one in charge learn to communicate better and really listen to the employees and really see them for who they are, there's going to change something on the level of those employees too. Well, those employees have partners, they have children, they talk to people outside of work. And well, that's going to change too, because well, the way they have learned to communicate and listen to other people because they got listened to, that's something that they can do in their turn. And so we don't have to wait till the next generation. It's basically going to happen within organizations. And then it's going to be passed on to the next generation. Well, I don't know why the camera just flickered. I'm not sure if everything is going the way it should right now. But having said so, it's when it comes to that ripple effect. So Brandon was talking about this, and brain fog again. Oh my God, this is so annoying. Why was I talking about what he said about creating a ripple effect? Oh yeah, now I know again. Fortunately, the brain fog is rather short nowadays. I probably would be able to mask it, but it's easier to actually express it because then when I worry about it, I block my thoughts actually. So that's counterproductive. So if I want to do something and I want to create that ripple effect, then yeah, that also means that I have to do things which are out of my comfort zone. And like I said, by asking those questions about being caged or being too comfortable, I realized like, yeah, that's so true. And my dream, of course, is related to creating that ripple effect, getting people to go on a trip with me. And it could be the trip going through Europe prior to Christmas, but it could also be a trip in one city, like for instance Chicago. I really would like to take people on a trip through Chicago, as in to do some sightseeing, but also to get a number of assignments and think about what it is that they want to achieve in the future, what they want differently. And well, if those people would be business owners, there we go. And I would work with them and I would be coaching them still afterwards. And they would be able to see during the whole trip, whereas I'm listening to them, recording stuff, giving them certain things like a video um, with their answers on it back so they can actually, listen back to it, create a meditation for them, which can help them focus on it, and then also connect to one another, in a group setting. Of course, then they would be connected. And, if they stay in touch, and especially when I would still be leading the group, but then online, then they cannot not do anything. First of all, they've paid a lot of money to change something. Second of all, they wouldn't have signed up if they didn't want to change anything. But third of all, when you are in company of other people and you start to back out, you are going to be called back in. That's the way it works. And well, isn't that specifically what I want? I want to create that ripple effect. And for a second, I was like, oh, I'm understanding it now, because he asked us questions. He gave us like a mini workshop. It was so cool. And so thinking about that, I could literally see it in front of me, like, oh yeah, of course, they go back, they talk to the employers, to their employees, employees get a better understanding, and well, maybe we can set up something and they actually bring their employees, or we do it on a Zoom call or whatever, and everyone has to watch along, and so they can actually see from one another what's happening and then give one another suggestions. I was like, yeah, if I can do that, that's when I'm actually creating that ripple effect. But here we go again. When I was thinking earlier about what I needed to do, I was like, what, I don't feel very comfortable with this. It had to do with also posting things on LinkedIn, because I do believe that part of my target audience is on LinkedIn and not on the other kinds of social media. Now, I'm not entirely certain about this, especially when it comes to YouTube, because I also know that part of those same people are the people who are not heard, seen, and understood themselves. That's why they don't know how to communicate with their employees. And they thrive when it comes to their work, but they don't understand why their employees aren't thriving in the same manner as they do. Well, you know, a bit of communication makes all the difference, but when they're not good at communicating, then so of course they can show the reward in bonuses and all that stuff, which is a good thing. But I still believe that more can emerge when they actually talk to one another. So that's my dream. And my future self knows, yeah, there's some work to be done. And after listening today, I got some more clarity. So, getting back to this whole thing, this is again about clarity, but also about honesty. The honesty is in what actions am I going to take? Well, the good news is I'm talking about it today and in a previous video. And I sort of have like a framework that I can work on and do stuff. So tomorrow when I see that friend, we're going to talk about that too. So I know she's going to give me a push. So when it comes to decisions, it's about, yeah, I'm going to take action. If for some reason I'm not going to take action, then there's one message I'm sending myself. You wanted to create a ripple effect? Really? Well, you don't show it. I don't believe you. That's what my mind is going to tell me, because I would be sending mixed messages to myself. So actually what's kind of cool to do this Friday Night Live, looking back on last week, and in addition, also talk about this dream, the legacy I want to leave behind, causing a ripple effect, and how to take this to the next level. So basically, what Brendan was talking about, it was, if you really love something and it makes you tick, he used a different expression, then that's the one thing you should be working towards. So who are the ones that you want to reach out to, and where can you find them, and how are you going to do it? So that has given me a lot of clarity, and it also has, I already decided that I was going to work on it, but there's no way to hide from this anymore. So yeah, when we talk about honesty, this is about, what am I going to tell you next week? Have I changed something? Have I worked towards this? Or didn't I? Well, I can tell you, if I haven't done anything by next week, then that's no good, because I say one thing and I do the other one. So I talk the talk, but I don't walk the walk. And that's not good. That's never good for a coach. On the other hand, if you have heard this and you're like, oh, but that's cool, then you do know where to find me. So then please reach out to me, leave a comment, and so I can get in touch with you. You can find me on social media, Lady Lexy Speaks Up. And, let's get to talk, because I do believe that when we are being clear to other people and we have clear messages and we really want to work together, that the world is going to be such a better place. What action are you going to take? Let me know.